Our Torah reading this Shabbat, in the triennial mode, focused on the holidays. We started with Pesach. The longest reading was Sukkot. Shavuot was touched on. I have been starting to prepare for high holidays. I am hoping to prepare material for small groups this year. The topic will be Leading a Life of Significance, Why Judaism Matters. And toward that, the topic in mind is the significance of being a Jew. And among the books that I have in my library and value is this book. I don't know if you know it. It's worth owning. By Jewish Lights Publishing, a tribute to Daniel Pearl, edited by his parents. Daniel Pearl, you may recall, was a journalist in Pakistan, an American journalist, who was captured by the Taliban and executed. And before he was executed, they, not unlike ISIS later, this again is January of 2002, they were filming it, and the video had him say, at their prompting, "My father was a Jew, my mother was a Jew, I am a Jew, and my grandfather has a street named for him in Bnei Brak, which he helped create." The last sentence, his father writes in the introduction, was unprompted and a bit of a mystery. I won't unpack by the book, see why his father feels that was of significance. But the topic that relates to our Torah reading is holidays. And one of the essays, as I was reading through the book, points out that there is this kind of tension, a duality in our observance of all the holidays. So that Sukkot, which got the big print, is a holiday in which 70 offerings are made of rams. The rabbis will say 70 representing all the nations of the world. And yet the Torah will then say there's another holiday right next to it, Shmini Atzeret, in which there's only one ram brought. And the Midrash will be that God will say, "You, Israel, are my precious people. You've been with me, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. Before you disperse, spend one more day, linger." And so Sukkot, 70 offerings, a kind of a, at least as the rabbis understand it, a look toward the universal coming before God, juxtaposed with the particular. You get that same kind of tension for each holiday. There's a sense of Passover being about our own distinctive liberation as a people, a particular extended family saga, and yet, when we open the door, we say, "Gol dichbin yete v'yechol," all who are hungry come and eat. And we say it in Aramaic, which was the common language. Elie pointed out when it says regarding the Haggadah, "B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam lerot et etzmo ki'ilu hu yatzam mitzrayim." In every generation, each person should see him or herself as if she or he went out from Egypt. In the commentary to the Haggadah that Elie Wiesel wrote, he circled the word person and said, it doesn't say each Jew should see him or herself only, but ultimately the aspiration of freedom is an aspiration that we as a people seek to convey to all peoples in our own observance. And so there's this natural tension between particularity and universalism in our observance of each of the holidays. One of the units in this particular compilation, I'll tease you only with some of the names off the back, but this is only, a few. Everybody from Kirk Douglas and Richard Dreyfuss to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Larry King, those are the public folks, Rabbi Harold Kushner, Amos O, Cynthia Ozick, Harold Kushner, Larry Kushner, Zalman Schachter Shalomi. The list goes on and on in terms of one-page, two-page entries in terms of what it means to be Jewish. I had thought that I would do this as a Unfortunately, it's already 20 to 12, and I'm really looking forward to Rabbi Steve Einstein's davening of Musaf, and don't want my dear friend to feel rushed, knowing that at noon many people's stomachs tell them it's time for lunch. So therefore, rather than doing it more interactive, which is what I had initially thought, I'm going to just share a couple of quotes. And hopefully the conversation will continue at lunch, specifically on this topic of humanity and ethnicity. There's a whole chapter, that universalism and particularism. There is a whole chapter in the book with some of those selections. Elie Wiesel writes, "As a Jew, I am sensitive to the pain of all human beings. To remain indifferent to persecution and suffering anywhere, in Afghanistan or in Kiev, is to become an accomplice of the tormentor. To be Jewish is to recognize that every person is created in God's image and thus worthy of respect. Being Jewish to me is to reject fanaticism everywhere." Samuel Friedman, a journalist from the New York Times, he still writes every other week on Saturdays in the religion column. He writes, "Universalism without tribalism is a kind of self-loathing." That's the pull-out quote. "Jewishness confounds so many Gentiles, and a good many Jews as well, because its definition is so elusive. But if I were asked for a definition of Jewishness, I would say it relies upon, indeed thrives upon, the tension of universalism and tribalism, the self-correcting tension between seeming opposite. Each hemisphere of our soul keeps the other honest. As an explorer of countries and cultures, Daniel Pearl was engaging in one of the consummate forms of Jewish universalism, bearing witness. As an innocent facing adversity, he sought strength in and was willing to lay claim to the very part of him that his murderers detested most. In those two ways, raveled together, he stood for our best selves." And last, and then a closing comment. And that's my teacher, Rabbi Harold Schulweis. Many of these are my teachers. Harold Schulweis writes, "In the celebrated biblical verse Leviticus 19:18, love of the other is linked to love of oneself, right? Love your neighbor as yourself. Egoism and altruism are not contradictions. The tradition cautions against that form of self-abnegation which some declare to be the entry to selfless altruism. No more than love of one's wife leads to misogyny does love of family lead to misanthropy." So it is a tension. And many of us will respond to this tension differently. It's been on my mind, the blessings that we recite. Asher b'chabanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. You have chosen us from among all the peoples and have given us his Torah. Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, who taught at the Jewish Theological Seminary for 50 years, felt in the 50s that needed to change. And if you go today to the University Synagogue as a classic Reconstructionist liturgy, in coming to the Torah, they do not say that line. because chosenness can be, and for many sadly, is supremacy, superiority, arrogance. Sadly and only naturally, many Jews feel we are better than others. I was watching the Republican convention and the Democratic convention these last 2 weeks. And in both conventions, what they shared in common was the sense of pride in being an American, saying that America is the greatest country on earth. My teacher, Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi, changed the blessing for himself. He preferred, rather than to say, Asher b'charbanu mikol ha'amim, who has chosen us from all the peoples, to add one letter. Asher b'charbanu im kol ha'amim, who has chosen us with all the peoples. For me, it's an ongoing tension. In that case, there's a context. And the context is the second half of the same blessing. Asher b'charbanu mikol ha'amim, though I'm comfortable with im as well. Mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato, and has given us his Torah. It's not that we're born better than others. It's not that there's only one way to draw close to God. There is not for me. But the Torah is what links us as an extended family. And the Torah is our gift to ourselves as a community, and God's gift to us and our gift to others. And when we come up to the Torah like this morning, and we touch it with our talit and we kiss it, we're saying this Torah is precious to us. And then when we say the blessings, Baruch Hu et Adonai havarach, we're saying it to the people of Israel as if we're recreating the moment of Mount Sinai, in which the Torah was given to a collective, standing shoulder to shoulder. And the congregation then refrains, Blessed is the ever-present one, the source of blessing forever. We who are here only for a visit acknowledge that God is different. God is here forever. And the quality of chosenness for me is the chosenness of the joy, of the privilege of embracing Torah as a responsibility, but as a responsibility to use Torah, as the prophets will teach, to be a light unto the nations. That doesn't mean necessarily to be better than others. It does mean to see oneself striving to be one's best, worthy of reflecting God's light. Ribono shel olam, asher b'charbanu im kol ha'amim. You have chosen us with all the peoples to be close to you. And yet, in speaking to you as a Jew, I do so as a noun, knowing that to be a Jew is to be whole as part of an extended family, striving to be exemplary on your behalf and on our own. May we so continue to grow close to you and be your light. Amen.